This is News Always On. China fired back on Saturday in a spiraling trade dispute with the US President Donald Trump by raising import duties on a $34 billion list of US goods, including soybeans, electric cars, and whiskeys. A CCTV state television news anchor quoted a government spokesperson as saying that China, quote, doesn't want to fight a trade war, but has to retaliate against Trump's tariff hike on Chinese goods. The US and China have the world's biggest trading relationship, but officials are increasingly strained over complaints Beijing's industry development tactics violate its free trade pledges and hurt US companies. Europe, Japan, and other trading partners raised similar complaints, but Trump has been unusually direct about challenging Beijing and threatening to disrupt such a large volume of exports. Meanwhile, a trade analyst said Beijing was well prepared for US tariffs and believes the tariffs were not a major threat to the US economy so long as the US was acting alone. Iran an analyst at China Policy Consultancy said Beijing was ready to tackle whatever comes from the US. He says that Chinese leaders likely aren't worried for now, but there would be more alarm if Europe and Japan team up with the US against China. If the US attacks China, I think we should stiffen our spines, right? But regardless of what kind of sanctions there are, it's not the country that is the most hurt, it's ordinary people. The victims here are ordinary people. I support it. I think we need equally large tariffs or even larger tariffs. I would support. Countries are like neighbors. If you are good, then I'll be alright. Everyone will be good. Am I right? If your neighbor is bullying you, and I don't counterattack and keep silent, that's not acceptable unless I'm a fool.
As long as the US is acting more or less alone, and as long as the US is also attacking other developed countries, China don't see a big problem. If the EU, Japan, and some other countries were to team up with the US in a more sophisticated strategy, then I think they will be more alarmed. This so-called trade war, it's not really about tariffs. They are ready for it. They are ready to tackle whatever comes from the US. They have done their calculations, have been preparing for years. They've looked through different scenarios. Especially, they've gone through the history of Japan and the Plaza Accord back in the 1980s. And they have tried to cover the loopholes. Like their overseas investments, they are now reining in what they call irrational overseas investments.
But that the size of the tariffs
China, in their retaliation, avoids tech products. They are very dependent on cooperating with the world. They are the center of global supply chains. But in the future, they want to grow up these value chains and become the center of value creation, innovation, finance, and so on. So they are doing all this according to the theory book. And as long as they do that, they believe that they can weather any storm coming. And it might hurt them if this is an all-out, if the war really breaks out, it might hurt them in the short run, but this is in their long-term interest anyway.
For more news updates, subscribe to our channel.